She was considered ugly by her species, but the human thought she was perfect. The sandstorm had passed, but the wind still whispered curses through the jagged spires of the Carethian desert. Dane Riven steadied his breath, visor retracted, the stale taste of recycled air still clinging to his mouth. He'd tracked the emergency signal for hours across the blistered red sands, expecting wreckage, maybe remains. What he found instead was her. She stood alone at the edge of a shattered ridge, the wreck of a silver scout vessel still smoldering behind her. The heat waves blurred her figure at first, like a mirage, but as Dane drew closer, the distortion gave way to something undeniably real. She was tall, strikingly so, at least a head above him, with porcelain blue skin that shimmered under the twin suns. Her bodysuit was unlike anything he'd seen, plated, sculpted violet metal that hugged her like ceremonial armor and second skin all at once. She turned when she sensed him, but made no move to retreat. Her hair, impossibly pale, caught the wind like strands of liquid platinum, cascading behind her shoulders. She was not beautiful in the way human women were, no. Her features were sharp, angular, almost predatory. But there was something captivating about her, something that made Dane stop mid-step, something that reached into a place inside him he thought long buried. He lowered his weapon. "I got your beacon," Dane said, voice soft through the comlink. "I'm not here to fight." Her eyes met his, violet, almost crystalline, but shaded with caution. "You're human," she said. Her voice was cool, clipped, and strangely melodic. Dane nodded, keeping his hands where she could see them. "Dane Riven, ex-Alliance Recon. You're Saela-Vey, right? The registry identified your ship as Etherian." She tilted her head slightly, a movement so precise it seemed rehearsed. "That name is not given freely." "Well," Dane said, a small smile flickering at the corner of his mouth, "if you'd prefer, I could just keep calling you the woman who made my heart stop." Her eyes narrowed. "I'm joking," he added quickly. "Mostly." She didn't laugh, but something in her gaze shifted, just a degree. Less ice, more curiosity. "You see me," she said quietly, almost to herself. "But you don't flinch." Dane frowned. "Should I?" She stepped forward into clearer view, and only then did he notice it. Subtle ridges running along her cheekbones, faint indigo markings that pulsed ever so slightly beneath her skin. Her kind considered those flaws, birthmarks, signs of genetic dilution. "I am not what my people call beautiful," she said. "They sent me to die with that ship." The words hit him harder than expected. "You're kidding." Saela-Vey did not blink. "I failed the rite of harmony. My bloodline was deemed incompatible. The wreck was no accident." Dane's throat tightened. He'd seen this before, in humans, in outposts where war and prejudice chewed people up and spat them out. "You don't look like a failure to me," he said. "You look like someone who survived." A beat passed between them, stretched thin by silence and the wind. "You're not repulsed?" she asked at last quietly. "No," Dane said. "I'm stunned." That silenced her more than any insult might have. Her expression faltered, just briefly, and then reset. "I need the transmitter inside," she said, gesturing toward the wreck. "The inner deck is unstable. The radiation will breach containment by nightfall." Dane moved beside her, glancing at the jagged hole in the hull. "Then let's get it and get out." They worked without speaking for several minutes. The heat was brutal. Radiation monitors began blinking red halfway through extraction. But Saela-Vey was swift, efficient, and precise in her movements. Every tool was used with economy. Every breath was measured. And yet Dane could feel it. She was trembling. Not from fear, from shame. When the transmitter sparked to life, Saela-Vey turned to him. "The relay drone is too far. We'll need shelter. The caves in the South Ridge will shield us from the worst of it." "I'll follow you," Dane said, shouldering the gear. "Lead the way." They set out into the dunes together, shadows stretching behind them in the waning light. Saela-Vey walked ahead, but kept glancing back. Not with suspicion, something closer to disbelief. After a while she spoke again. "They used to call me Veka. It's a child's name. It means pale mistake. Dane didn't look away from her when he said, "You're not a mistake. You're the most stunning thing I've ever seen." She slowed, just enough that their steps aligned. "And what does that make you, Dane Riven?" He smiled faintly. "Probably a man who's finally seeing clearly." And for the first time since they met, she smiled. The cave mouth was narrow and jagged, half hidden by the sloping curve of the southern ridge. Dane ducked to enter, holding back a tangle of dried vines and mineral webbing, as Saela-Vey slipped inside ahead of him. The temperature dropped instantly, cool, still air replacing the sweltering heat of the desert, the silence almost sacred. Inside, the walls shimmered with faint bioluminescent trails. Pockets of glowing fungus pulsed gently, lighting the chamber in a soft violet hue. It smelled like mineral dust and something older, something fossilized by time. Dane dropped the equipment by a sloped rock, then exhaled slowly. "We're clear, at least for the night." Saela-Vey didn't respond. She'd moved to the far edge of the cavern, eyes trained on the passage deeper in. Her profile was statuesque in the violet light, equal parts defiant and unreadable. She stood with her arms folded, her breathing shallow. He stepped closer. "You okay?" She nodded once, too quickly. "These caves are sacred to my people, or were, before they became obsolete." Dane frowned. "Obsolete how?" Saela-Vey knelt and brushed her fingers across a faded glyph carved into the stone. This was once a sanctuary of bonding, a place where chosen pairs would spend their night of first resonance. "Resonance," he echoed. "Romantic? Spiritual? Physiological? In our early eras, bonds were chosen by emotion, by intuition. But that was before purity protocols, before genetics decided who was fit to carry our legacy." Dane crouched beside her, lowering his voice. "So the idea was, let your hearts decide, not your DNA?" She glanced at him. "More or less. The glyphs are warnings now, a record of what was lost." Dane leaned back, studying the soft glow dancing across her cheek. "And what happens if people bond here now?" She hesitated, then stood. "Nothing, unless both participants have a certain trait, something buried deep. A resonance field, ancient blood. And you have that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she moved to the center of the cave, placing the transmitter carefully on the ground. "It's better if we stay on opposite sides. The spores from the lichen here, they're psychotropic, harmless in small doses, but if we breathe too much while in close proximity, it could trigger an exchange." "A mental one?" Dane asked. "A shared dreaming," she said. "You'll see what I see, feel what I remember, and vice versa." "That sounds intimate." She turned toward him, expression serious. "It's involuntary. It will feel real. The mind cannot always tell the difference." They sat apart, as instructed, but the space between them still felt charged. Dane leaned his head back against the cool stone wall, eyes heavy from fatigue. The hum of the transmitter filled the silence like a mechanical lullaby. After a long pause, he said quietly, "I used to think I had to earn everything, that if I just pushed harder, proved myself enough, I could fix what I broke." Saela-Vey didn't speak, but he felt her attention on him like a tether in the dim light. "I left someone behind," he said. "Her name was Kira. I missed the evac transport by 8 minutes. She didn't make it." Still silence, and in it, weight. "She died because I couldn't keep a promise," Dane said. "That's the last thing I remember before I left Earth." The sound of her voice on the comlink fading, static, then nothing. "You carry it like weight," Saela-Vey said softly. "I carry it because it was my fault." He heard her move then, just a shift in position, but it felt seismic. "My mother told me I would be barren," she said, voice almost a whisper. "Because of my markings, because of the failure in my blood." Dane opened his eyes. She was facing him now, cross-legged, lit by the soft purple glow. Her posture was still proud, but her voice had a break in it. "She said I would never be chosen, that no partner would ever want to bond with something so flawed. They made sure I believed her." He swallowed. She was wrong. No, Saela-Vey said. She was right. According to every law, every test, every scan, I am undesirable, a risk, a recessive. They sent me here knowing I wouldn't come back. Dane met her eyes. Then your laws are broken. Neither of them moved. The air between them had grown thick, humming faintly with tension and something else, something biological. Dane, she said suddenly, are you feeling warm? He touched his temple. Yeah, a little lightheaded. She inhaled sharply. It's starting. A dull, vibrating hum settled into his skull. The cave pulsed once with a breath of wind that wasn't wind. The edges of his vision blurred, and then he was no longer in the cave. He stood in a hall of crystalline mirrors, each one flickering with scenes he didn't recognize. A child with silver skin running across a starlit courtyard. A woman, older, severe, shouting through tears. A long corridor, a cold chair, needles, pain that wasn't his. Emotion surged through him, not as memory but as presence. He dropped to one knee, gasping. Dane, her voice echoed, but it sounded layered. Saela-Vey speaking through time, through thought. I see you, he said aloud. I see what they did. Another wave crashed over him. Her humiliation at the tribunal, the forced isolation, the quiet yearning for someone, anyone, to say she was enough. Then it changed. He was flying now, reliving his own past. The battlefield, the promise. Kira's voice as the signal cut out, the crushing silence that followed. His last words to her, never heard. And then, the desert, the cave, her. They awoke at the same time, breath-catching, skin slick with sweat. Dane sat forward, trying to ground himself in the here and now. Saela-Vey sat upright, arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Her eyes were shining, but not from fear. He reached for her without thinking. She didn't pull away. That wasn't just dreaming, he said. No, she whispered. We're bonded now. The spores. The cave responded to both of us, the old way. What does that mean? It means, she said slowly, that I've shared something sacred with an outsider, that I've done something forbidden. Dane brushed a strand of her hair from her face. And do you regret it? She met his gaze. No. They sat like that for a long time, quiet, breath steady, hearts untangling the truths that had bound them alone for too long. Outside, the wind howled against the stones. Inside, something ancient had taken root, something neither of them could take back. The morning light spilled through the narrow cave mouth, painting the stone in thin gold. Dane stirred first, the echo of dreams still clinging to the back of his mind like fog. He blinked slowly, turning toward her. Saela-Vey sat at the edge of the cave, knees drawn to her chest, eyes fixed on the horizon. Her hair glowed faintly in the light, and her shoulders rose and fell in a rhythm too calm to be untroubled. She looked like a statue carved by regret. He joined her without a word, sitting beside her. For a time, neither spoke. You should go, she said finally, not looking at him. Dane raised an eyebrow. Why would I do that? Because when they find us, and they will, you'll be judged for the bond. Her voice was quiet now, but each syllable was sharp. And I will be judged for choosing you. Dane leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I didn't choose the bond. Neither did you. That cave did. Saela-Vey shook her head. That doesn't matter to them. He studied her, the soft sadness hidden behind all her fire. You're scared. I'm prepared, she corrected. There's a difference. A shadow crossed the sand in the distance, sleek, metallic, fast. A scout skimmer, gliding low. They're here, she whispered. Within minutes, a formation of armored Etherean enforcers dismounted. They moved with rigid precision, weapons slung low but ready. They encircled the cave like it was sacred ground, defiled. The woman who stepped forward wore the insignia of the Vey lineage, royal, absolute. Her skin was iridescent silver, flawless, her expression carved from ice. Saela-Vey stood as she approached, back straight, chin high. Saela-Vey, the matron said, her voice like cracking glass. You live. I do, Saela replied with no bow, no deference. And you bring contamination. Her eyes slid toward Dane. He rose slowly. "I'm not a threat." The matron ignored him. "You know the law. You know the price." "I also know truth," Saela-Vey said. "The bond was real, the resonance undeniable." "That cave is no longer sacred," the matron hissed. "Its rituals are forbidden. Your actions are heresy." "I was cast out before I ever acted," Saela said. "Don't pretend this is justice. You sealed my fate long before I left." The matron raised a hand, and 2 guards stepped forward. Dane moved between them. "You'll have to go through me." A flicker of disdain crossed her face. "You are nothing, a human stray. You do not stand in our rights." "I stood with her," he said. "I accepted her blood. I spoke the word. And I'm not letting her go alone." A second enforcer lifted a ceremonial blade, its edge so thin it seemed to hum. "Then you will be judged together," the matron said. They were escorted under guard across the valley to a high plateau where crystalline spires rose into the clouds. The gathering site shimmered with pale light, its polished floor etched with symbols of verdict and banishment. It was a place of endings, not redemption. The crowd formed in silence, nobles, scholars, elders of her caste. Saela's family stood near the center, cloaked in approval or shame. None stepped forward. No one met her eyes. Dane stood beside her with wrists bound in silver filament. He glanced at her once, unsure whether to speak. Her face was unreadable again, composed, distant. The chief arbiter stepped forward. His skin was translucent and inscribed with sacred script, his voice amplified by hidden resonance. "The exile has returned, bonded to an off-worlder. This violates the purity accord. Her bloodline is now severed, her role erased." "Then erase me," Saela said. "You did long ago." A murmur swept through the observers. The arbiter turned to Dane. "And what of him? Shall he face purification or removal?" "I claim him," Saela said, clearly and without hesitation. That stopped everything. "You claim him?" the arbiter echoed. "By the rights of resonance, as once was law." The matron stepped forward, voice trembling with fury. "Those rights are dead." "Then let them rise," Saela said, "because I will not renounce the bond." Dane turned toward her, heart pounding. "You don't have to do this." She looked at him gently, something raw in her eyes. "Yes, I do. For once I won't be ashamed of what I am, and I won't let them shame you either." Silence pressed on the entire plateau. At last the arbiter raised his hand. "Then the bond must be proven." A ring of smooth stone was formed, ancient, circular, etched with living glyphs. They stepped inside together. "The ritual of truth will begin," the arbiter declared. "Let the bond reveal itself." The glyphs beneath their feet began to glow. The air shimmered with heat and memory. A pulse struck Dane's chest, soft at first, then searing. Visions swelled behind his eyes. He saw her childhood, her isolation, the tribunal that labeled her unworthy, the moments of self-doubt so deep they left her trembling in silence. Then he felt her see him, his guilt over Kira, his fear of becoming hollow, his ache to matter to someone again. Then something shifted. He saw himself through her eyes, a creature not lesser, not broken, but clear. Human emotion was messy, but it was sincere. In her memories, he was radiant with a kind of honesty her world had beaten out of her. When it ended, they dropped to their knees, gasping. The arbiter watched. "The bond is true," he said. "It cannot be denied." But the matron stepped forward, fury burning in her voice. "And yet still forbidden." "Then so be it," Saela said, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "We'll leave." She helped Dane to his feet, her fingers lacing through his without hesitation. The crowd opened in stunned silence. No one moved to stop them. At the edge of the plateau, Dane paused. "You really want to walk away from all this?" She held his gaze. "I walked away the day they told me I was unworthy. But now, I choose something for myself." Together they descended the stone steps into exile, not as fugitives, but as something far rarer. Partners, equal, seen. The sky above the plains had turned the color of old fire, amber streaked with smoke. Saela-Vey moved through the tall desert grasses like she belonged there, barefooted now, her armor shed days ago. Exile had stripped her of rank, title, and home, but not of purpose. Dane followed a few paces behind, his boots crunching against dry stone. They hadn't spoken much in the 3 days since the verdict. There hadn't been much to say. The bond had done what it was supposed to. It had revealed the truth, and the truth hadn't mattered. They had crossed the fractured riverbed by night, moved past the skeleton of a war-split mesa, and now wandered the edge of the wilds, uncharted land, outside any jurisdiction. The kind of place where history didn't reach, and names were less important than intentions. At dusk, they made camp under a leaning cliff face. Dane set the perimeter alarms while Saela arranged the fabric of their shelter into something functional. Neither needed to say it aloud. Someone would come looking. That night, a cold rain fell, brief but sharp, drumming on the metal roof like an ancient rhythm. They didn't sleep. Not really. Just after midnight, Saela stirred from the silence and whispered, "There's movement behind us. 2 skimmers, light class, 1 damaged." Dane didn't ask how she knew. He trusted her instincts more than any sensor. She looked at him without fear. "They won't negotiate. They'll demand submission, or blood." Dane stood and checked his weapon. "Then we give them neither." By morning, they were climbing again, following the ridgeline higher. The terrain became jagged, less desert, more cliff. At the summit they paused. Below them, nestled against a plateau carved by time, stood an outpost. Not Etherean, not human, neutral. Small towers and modular domes clung to the rock. Solar flares blinked from the rooftops, no banners, no allegiances, just one beacon, pulsing. Safe zone, treaty compliant. Saela breathed out slowly. "Do you think they'll turn us away?" Dane adjusted the strap on his shoulder. Only one way to find out. They descended cautiously. The guard post lit up as they approached. 3 sentries stepped forward, mixed species. Etherean defectors, human traders, even a Terran hybrid with metallic lines beneath his skin, all armed, all watching. Dane raised his hand slowly. "We're not here to fight." "We're not here to shelter fugitives either," the lead guard said. His accent was sharp, clipped. "You two have faces the whole system's whispering about." Saela stepped forward, shoulders back, eyes forward. "Then let us pay, trade, serve, whatever the cost." The guard studied her, then blinked. "You're her, the outcast who claimed a human mate." The words hung in the air. More figures emerged from behind crates and walls. They stared, not with hatred, but with something closer to scrutiny, uncertainty. Dane stepped beside her. "We didn't ask for the bond, but we don't regret it." The guard's mouth twitched. "You knew what it would cost her?" "I did," Dane said, "and I'd do it again." Something shifted then, not trust, but recognition, the kind that only comes from those who've lost things they weren't allowed to love. A woman near the back, older, with burn scars over one side of her face, stepped forward. "Let them stay," she said. "One night. Let the desert decide the rest." The guard hesitated, then nodded once. "One night. You'll be given a shelter dome. After that, you choose. Keep running, or stay and defend what you claim to be sacred." Saela looked at Dane. He didn't hesitate. "I'm done running." She took his hand, her voice soft but unwavering. "I'm done hiding." They followed the woman into the compound, past others who gave them long, silent looks. Not rejection, not embrace, but something in between, the kind of silence that always comes before a reckoning. That night, under a temporary roof with barely enough power to warm the walls, Saela curled against him. Outside, the wind blew dust against the metal, and rumors moved faster than the storm. Tomorrow would bring something, a fight, a decision, a test. But for now, they were warm, together, seen, and for once, that was enough. Dawn came slowly, as if the twin suns themselves were reluctant to rise. The sky burned pale orange and gold above the outpost, casting long shadows over rusted metal and tired people. Dane stepped outside the shelter dome first, squinting into the light. His ribs ached from the cold night, and the air smelled like dust and solar fuel. The compound was already awake. Traders tightened cargo, guards adjusted shoulder pads, and someone poured thick, dark liquid from a kettle that smelled faintly of root spice. It all felt normal, except for the eyes. People watched him as he moved, not with hostility, but with curiosity, the kind that comes with stories passed from mouth to mouth. Saela emerged a few minutes later, wrapped in a weather-worn cloak. Her markings shimmered faintly, violet lines catching the sunlight. Her hair was tied back now, exposing the high arcs of her cheekbones and the quiet strength in her posture. She looked like no one else in the galaxy, and for once, she didn't shrink from that. Dane handed her a tin cup. "It's bitter, but it's hot." She took it without a word. Their fingers touched, held for a second longer than needed. A loud horn echoed across the plateau. The guard from the previous day approached them, visor up, expression unreadable. "You're being called." Dane exchanged a glance with Saela. "To what?" The guard shrugged. "You stayed. That means you'll answer." They followed him to the central platform, a flat expanse of stone at the outpost's heart. It wasn't a tribunal, but it felt like one. About 40 people had gathered. Some were leaning against crates, others standing in loose clusters. Some held weapons across their chests. None spoke. They simply waited. An older woman stepped forward. She wore no badge, but the way others deferred to her made her authority clear. Her gray braids were knotted high, and one of her arms was fully artificial, cleanly fused to her shoulder with old tech. "You claim a bond," she said. "You ask for shelter. But we've seen what claims lead to, how they put fire on our roofs and soldiers at our gates." Dane squared his stance. "We didn't ask for the bond, but we accepted it. We didn't come to start a war." Saela stepped forward beside him. "We came to stop running." There was a long silence. The air was dry and tense, like a storm waiting behind the horizon. Then the woman asked, "Would you fight for it?" Dane scanned the crowd, faces full of questions, doubt, pain. "I already have," he said. "Would you stay?" she asked. Dane looked at Saela, then back. "If there's a place for us, yes." She turned to Saela. "And you? Would you stay among those who know your face, who know your story?" "I would stay," Saela said, her voice steady, "but not to wait. I would build. I would make something new, for us, for others like us." No one spoke for a moment. Then the woman nodded. "Then build it. Prove that something sacred can survive this galaxy." She turned and walked away. The rest began to follow. No applause, no ceremony. Just a slow dispersing of fear into something less rigid, into possibility. They stood alone on the platform as the sky widened above them. When they returned to the dome, Saela sat by the threshold and untied the satchel from her belt. She drew out a small cloth bundle, worn at the edges. "What's that?" Dane asked, kneeling beside her. She opened it carefully. Inside was a shard of stone, deep violet, pulsing faintly with internal light. A fragment from the resonance cave, the place where it began. "We could throw it away," she said softly. "Start without it." "We could," Dane said, "but that stone saw who we were before we could admit it." She turned it in her hand. "Then let it stay. A reminder." He reached out, took the shard, and placed it gently on the floor between them. "We've both been told what we're not worthy, not enough, not right." She leaned into his shoulder. "But here we are, still choosing." Outside, the suns dipped lower, their twin flares brushing the tops of the cliffs. The sky turned molten red. A breeze passed through the compound, stirring cloth and dust. Somewhere nearby, a child's laugh echoed, and metal clanged softly in rhythm. Dane turned to her. "Whatever comes next, we face it together," Saela nodded. "As bondmates, as equals, not as exile and outsider." They stayed that way as the light faded. No vows were spoken aloud. None were needed. The bond had already been made, in the stone, in the storm, in the parts of themselves they'd let each other see. And as the stars returned to the desert sky, the outpost behind them quieted into stillness. Together, they had survived the judgment of their worlds. Now came the greater task, living freely.